I just want to welcome friends and family again today, just to this very special occasion. We're so excited these guys are getting baptized. In a moment, you'll hear the unique stories from them of how Jesus has come into their life, how he's impacted their life, what faith looks like in action. And also, maybe you'll hear why they want to get wet today, because it's an unusual thing, isn't it, to have a big pool of water and have lots of people watch you get into it. Not to bring that to the fore again, guys. Sorry about that. Baptism, it's symbolic. It's a symbolic representation of something that's happened in the lives of Kelly and Hayley. And I want to just unpack that a little bit. I found this diagram helpful in the past. Let's go through it. We tend to live our own stories, don't we? We tend to live with our own goals and our own vision for our lives. We tend to grow into maturity and live independently. And that's not bad in essence. You know, we grow and we mature and we live. We're encouraged to live maturely and independently, but many of us live without really any connection with God throughout our lives. We might have an awareness with God. We might grow up with an awareness of God from school or from family or from background, but we tend to live independently from God. That was certainly my story growing up. I had a very dim awareness of God, but I was sort of setting my stall out and going my own way and figuring out what I wanted from life, where I wanted to try and get to. And I think we all probably think we can live independently because we probably think we can live the best way. We probably think we've got a good idea of what a good life looks like. And sometimes when we think about God, we think maybe that God's way isn't the best way. When Jesus came and walked the earth, he talked about God's story. He talked about our own story and he talked about God's story. And he began to unpack what God looked like and what God's story looked like. And he also talked about how living our own story tends to take us away from the best that God has for us. He was quite dramatic in his language. He said, we may gain everything the world has to offer. We may gain money, possessions, fame, position, but never really discover the true meaning of life, the true meaning of love and God's love for us, and really discover the true purpose for our lives. Jesus summed this up when he said the following. He said, in living our own alternative story, we might gain the world, yet in doing so lose ourselves in the midst of trying to gain everything the world has to offer. So Jesus came and he called people back to God. He talked about coming back to God, returning to God's story. And he did this through the way he lived. He did this through the words that he spoke, the way that he treated people, the way that he served people. This was all a signpost back into God's story. And everyone who came into contact with him connected with God's love and God's story. And Jesus' life and words, they revealed a God who loves us and wants us to know his love fully, wants us to journey with him through life and into eternity. And in fact, he said, if you live God's story, you will find a life in all its fullness. So Jesus called us to repent. And that word simply means to change our mind, to change our direction. Jesus spoke to people and said, the way you're going is taking you away from God's best, away from God's love. So turn around, think again. And Jesus said, if you follow me, I'll show you a way. I will lead you back into God's story, back into relationship with God. Jesus said, I've come to seek and save the lost. And he is like a signpost or a doorway guiding us back into God's love. And Jesus said, if you follow me, you'll know a different quality of life. You'll experience a quality and a purpose of life that's different to living your own alternative story. In fact, the life I'm offering is superior in every way. It's important to recognize he didn't promise us a trouble-free life. When we start to follow Jesus, all our troubles don't go away. All the things that sort of we struggle with don't necessarily go away. But we start to journey our life with God's love and God's power into this fullness of life. So simply put, baptism, it's a symbolic representation that Kelly and Hayley have decided to respond to this invitation to come back into God's story. It's a bit like crossing over from one bank of a river to another, symbolically. So as they go under the water and they come out of the water, it's like they've crossed over into God's story and God's love. And that's what the water simply symbolizes today. There's nothing special about the water. It's not blessed water. It's not magic water. It's just warm tap water. It is warm. But symbolically, it represents this crossing over from living our own life independent from God, crossing over into God's love and God's story. It's just an outward expression of something that's taken place inside the heart of these guys. And so it's also a chance for you as family and friends to support them. It's an outward demonstration. You can be here. You can tangibly see them get baptized. It's an outward expression and a chance for you to stand with them and support them and encourage them in their faith journey today. The water doesn't need to be special because what's special is already happening in the life of these guys. And that's why they're getting baptized. They're acknowledging Jesus in their lives. They're acknowledging their story with God. They're acknowledging their ongoing journey of faith. If you're a follower of Jesus today and you've already been baptized, it's a great moment for you to think on and reflect on your story in God. What is God calling you into? How can your faith be reignited today? Maybe you remember your baptism day and how it felt. And maybe God again is calling you and trying to invigorate you and excite you about the years ahead, about your faith story, giving you vision for the future. You may be a follower of Jesus who's not yet got baptized. And I know it can seem scary. I know it can seem challenging doing something in front of a group of people like this, but I encourage you to do so because everyone who gets baptized will then just tell you how good it is, how powerful it is to actually go through this symbolic act and demonstration of what God has done in their life. And it will strengthen your faith and it will encourage you in your onward journey of faith. And if you're here today as a family or friend and maybe you've had no connection with church or with God or heard about Jesus, I just encourage you just to open your heart today and just to be listening. Because God may want to speak to you specifically. He may want to encourage you. He may want to drop a seed of faith into your heart today. So as you listen to the testimonies of the people who get baptized, just open your heart and say, God, I'm not sure if you're there, but if you are, speak to me. Speak to me personally in the way that you've spoken to these people. Anyway, enough of me. I think it's time to hear some testimonies. So
first of all, I want to welcome Hayley. Give her a huge round of applause. We've got two very special ladies today, and I met Hayley over a couple of years ago now when she first came to the Hub. Hayley and her lovely family, who we've got to know. Hi. They came to Hub in Herne Bay that we do once a month, and then just kind of filtered into Riverside, and then her mom came along and got involved in Grow Baby. And it's just been such a joy to get to know Hayley. Oh, also Alpha. We did Alpha, didn't we, last year, which both her and Kelly were on. It's just been such a joy to get to know Hayley and her journey. But she's going to tell you more about how she came to today. So I'm going to stay up here, but over to you, Hayley.
Thank you. Hi. Right. A concept that came up in our life group the other week was the idea that everything could be explained as a coincidence. However, coincidences happen more often when we pray. This really stuck out to me, and throughout my story, please keep this in mind. So where do I begin? Well, God has always played a part in my entire life, but in different ways. When I was younger, I recall going to Sunday school and going to church with primary school for harvest festivals and breaking the microphone. I'll be careful with this one. Also, the annual walk down Old Dover Road in Canterbury to the cathedral for our end-of-year service with Simon Langton girls. But even though they were fond memories, I think it was always about what we were doing rather than why we were doing it. My belief, however, had always been that God did exist. And when our bodies have nothing more to give, our souls go to heaven and live on, keeping a loving eye on our loved ones. I'd always spoken to those that had departed, and this had always brought some level of comfort. For a long time, this was my relationship with God, sometimes having a chat, but nothing more regular than I would have liked it to have been. There, like I'm sure most people, have been events in my life when I have turned to God. Looking back over my life, I've always had 2 truly amazing parents and a little brother, or not so little now. He's like up here now. Along with them and friends and family, my childhood was full of fun memories. Yes, we have grief in passing of grandparents and quite a few pets, but we were a strong unit that supported each other. I went off to university and to return shortly after to find my slightly, ever so slightly, younger husband-to-be. It was one of those coincidences. I transferred my job from Tesco's at university to move to Whitstable in 2005, and there he was. We started dating, having known each other about 3 months, following an Oscars evening and a few too many shots. But within a month, we were talking about marriage. We even went to see our wedding venue before he proposed. I think that must have given him a bit of courage to ask. But it felt right. We've now been married 16 years in June, and the challenges that lied ahead of us would only make us stronger. All the decisions and timings that had to line up for us to meet, I truly believe we were and still are meant to be, and that God had his hand in this. I did have a few boyfriends before of varying niceties, but this man, Gavin, was saved until just the right time, that perfect moment when I needed him and he needed me, not through upset, but through love. We were both in a place to be able to find that love. 1 month may sound short, but then I had my parents' experience to look to. And my dad proposed to my mum after only 2 weeks, having met him in her in a nightclub. So in actual fact, we were on the slower side. Now I was going to talk to you about events, significant events. Well, Gav and I got married in 2009, full of hope of starting a family. We'd been lucky enough to have godchildren and nephews and nieces and loved every moment we spent with them. We thought, now it's our turn. Well, that particular journey wasn't to be the easiest. We had a miscarriage. The doctors said that it was a chance in a million that we fell pregnant, and the possibility of falling again would be unlikely. So eventually we started our IVF journey. Oh, did I pray. I prayed to have a little one in our arms. It was strange because there was always something in me that thought I would find it hard to have a baby. Maybe he was preparing me. Well, in September 2012, I was pregnant. We were so fortunate. The first round of IVF had worked. Another coincidence? My labour, and I'm sure not many people would say this, was the best it could have been. Apart from the midwife telling me not to push when the head was there, oh, and my water's breaking again all over my shoes, everything was perfect. The gas and air helped, but there were no dramas, and Gav even got some cake. This was the only time I was going to be able to do this, it turns out, and it had been perfect, as though God had known and made it so. But, as many of you may know, Phoebe, our daughter, is not our only child, and after a frozen egg had not taken, we decided to adopt. Now, adoption, oh dear, thank you, is not an easy decision for many, but for me, had always been my wish. In year 6, my last year of primary school, I had written that in the future, I would like to live in Italy, be married to a very, very rich husband, and have 2 children of my own and adopt 2. Half of 1 out of 3 isn't bad. I didn't get 2 of 2, but 1 and 1 is perfect for us. At 11, I didn't know anyone that had adopted, but my 11-year-old self had known. Coincidence? We went through the process of getting approved, and if ever anyone does embark on this, then I'm more than happy to share my experiences. It is tough, and rightfully so. The emotions are high, and then you have to wait. They always said you would know the child was the one when you saw their profile. I prayed we would find our child, that I would know. We had seen a few profiles, and I really felt for these children. But I remember the moment so clearly that I saw my son. I was walking down to the kitchen at work, just opened up my emails, and clicked on his profile. The tears started streaming down my face. We'd found him. He was our son. The love I felt was like I had when I looked at Phoebe, unconditional, a mother's love. How did that happen? Out of all the children in the system, and unfortunately there are a lot, we found him. Yet again, a coincidence. Thankfully, the social workers agreed that he was best placed with us, and our journey together began. The four of us and our dog Tilly. It was like it was always meant to be. But in January 2019, our daughter at age 5 one night had a stroke. We didn't know it was a stroke, and Gav took her to the doctors the next morning. Unfortunately, the medical advice we were given wasn't the best, and I think God was with us to encourage a second opinion. Gav went to Estuary View and was told to go straight to A&E. Our world shook. After leaving work to get to QEQM, to find Phoebe in bed where she didn't look like herself. Her left eye all over the place, she had no energy, and she just wasn't our happy-go-lucky little girl. But strangely, there was a sense of calm over me. Even when they told us they'd found a bleed on her brain and we needed to be blue lighted to King's College Hospital. So many will say it was the adrenaline or a mother's instinct, but I truly felt God was there. And that night I prayed in tears in the family room when no one was around and Phoebe asleep. In the days that followed, I believed my prayers had been answered. Phoebe became the most determined and positive I've ever seen her. Even when told she couldn't leave the hospital until she could walk down the corridor unaided, she pulled away from me and tried to skip. He, God, was there for her at that time, not to make her well, but to give her and us what we all needed: support, courage, and hope. Those that know Phoebe will know she has her challenges, but has a beautiful nature. And to most, the signs of a stroke are nowhere to be seen. Jumping forward to December 2023, I still had my beliefs and still checked in with God, but something changed. I wanted more. One of my team took a webinar explaining about his Christian faith and what it meant to him, and it moved me. He had had the courage to talk about his beliefs in front of about 300 people, and yet I was hiding mine. I'd always felt like I didn't really belong. I was shy speaking about my faith to friends and family, as I was nervous as to what they'd think. I didn't really go to church, as when I had gone, I felt like I didn't believe enough and would be judged, while I was soon to be proved wrong. We'd been going to the hub, and everyone was so lovely. And after my colleague had been so brave, in January 2024, I thought this was my turn to step up, and I'm so glad I did. I spoke to my mum, and to my surprise, she'd been thinking the same as me about trying out church. We walked in, and it felt like home. No pressure. I could just be me. Within the first few weeks, there were words of encouragement and love, and all the things I had believed, but just taking it a bit further. This gave me even more strength to be able to speak with friends and family. And you know what? There was no judgment, just support. They may not agree or believe in the same things, but for the first time, I actually felt like my beliefs and me were okay, and I could open up. Since joining, I think my relationship with God has got stronger, and the exploration of my faith through Alpha and now through my life group has been amazing, and I'd like to thank all those who played a part in that. So why get baptised? It just feels right. I am now comfortable with my faith and beliefs, even if they aren't the same as the person standing next to me. But it's my faith and I'm owning it. Oh, and as to the idea I started with, for me, coincidences do happen, but there are definitely more when I pray. Thank you.
Wow, that's just the first one. This is Hayley's amazing family. And what I didn't say, obviously I said Liz is part of the leadership team of Grow Baby, but her husband Dave, who doesn't come along on a Sunday. We often thank people, Dave, for doing things, you know, with all the different things that go on. But Dave comes every Monday and more and works tirelessly cleaning and sorting. And so I just want to thank you publicly, Dave, because we often do that and you're not here to hear that. So thank you for being so amazing for Grow Baby. Thank you. I know you'll absolutely hate that, but it needs to be said. Right, Kels. This is Kelly. So we've known Kelly for just over a year when she walked into church, but she'll tell you that herself. She's now part of our life group. Where's our life group? Give us a shout. It's just a joy. I call her my friend. She's amazing. I'm not standing up here with her because she's got a lot to say and she's happy with me sitting down. So I'll be up here if you need me as soon as I can. But you crack on, okay? Oh, yeah.
I'm loud, but I'm not that loud. Hi, everyone. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kelly. And if you sit over here on the front left, we might never have met because I'm always sat in the corner over there and I always run away whenever anyone mentions talking to strangers. Though you might have seen me on Sundays in Kingfishers, on Mondays in youth, during the weekdays, working from home in the cafe, or just volunteering with random bits as and when I can. So yes, I have been well and truly Keely'd, as they say. I came to Riverside just over a year ago, in January 2024, and I never would have thought back then that I would still be coming here now, never mind being stood here today about to be baptised. I have been battling with this decision for weeks, and every time Keely asked me if I was getting baptised, it was a very sheepish yes. I was really unsure, but apparently this is something that everyone goes through and is actually part of the process. The reason I was unsure was because I am a very honest person. Those of you who know me will know this about me. I just say it how it is. And I felt like if I was to stand up here today and say that since I found God, life has been amazing, it would be disingenuous. I felt like I should be able to stand here and tell you that everything has become perfect, and it hasn't. But then I started thinking about what I could say. And what I can say with 100% honesty is that since I joined Riverside, my life is 100 times better. Yes, it's not perfect, and yes, I do still struggle, but that's part of life. And most importantly, I'm not doing it alone anymore. My life today, as part of the Riverside family, is pretty much unrecognisable to the life I had before, and that is something I can say honestly and proudly. So I made the decision to go ahead with today, because as part of my testimony today, I will just be me. There will be things that probably don't follow the regular path, if that even exists, and I will probably say things I shouldn't. But I'm me, and my hope is that if even one person listening is impacted in feeling able to share their story honestly, even if it isn't perfect, then it was worth putting myself out there and taking the leap. But of course, I'm also doing this today for me. And this is something I had to think about carefully. Was I being baptised because I thought it was something that I should do? Was I doing it because of some sort of weird FOMO or feeling like I wasn't part of the crew until I'd done it? But in fact, no, I'm doing this for me and my journey. Someone in my life group spoke about baptism a couple of months ago, and something he said really landed with me. I'm probably paraphrasing really badly here, and I'll probably be told about it at the next life group. But what I heard was that it was a bit like a marriage. And when you get married, you're not saying, we've done it, we're all fixed and healed, let's celebrate. It's not the finish line, it's a commitment. You're essentially saying that from that moment on, you're committing to going on the journey together. There absolutely will be ups and downs, and it probably won't be perfect, but you're in it together. And that's ultimately what I want to do today. I want to commit to this journey. To me, it feels a bit like one of those turnstiles that you don't walk back through. Once I do this, I'm committed to the journey. So if there are diversions, which I'm sure there will be, or delays or traffic along the way, I'm committed to the journey. You don't just stop, you don't just do a U-turn and go back home. I'm now officially on this journey with God. So I guess I better tell you a bit about how I got here and how on earth I went from someone with absolutely no faith to someone getting baptised in just over a year. I am going to try and keep this testimony as short and interesting as possible, so if it's too long and boring, I apologise, and please just nudge anyone who starts to snore so it doesn't put me off. When I started putting this testimony together, I figured the best place to start was when and how I first came to Riverside. But when I started looking at it, I finally realised that God was at work way before this even happened, without me even realising. So I'll reverse back to what I now consider to be a turning point of my life. To set the scene, I'm from a very small island in North Wales, born and bred there, quietly gay, because you don't do that there, or at least you didn't at the time, just living my life. Then a load of things happened at once, and I found myself in the darkest spiral I've ever experienced. I've experienced this before. I was 23 when I first wanted to take my own life. I'm about to turn 35 in a few days, by the way, so that's 12 bonus years now. But this specific spiral was probably the worst one. Coming off the back of lockdown, a terrible breakup, and in all honesty, just feeling ridiculously lonely and worthless, I was totally done with life. I am going to put up a couple of images as we go, by the way, and yes, that is my ploy to keep you awake. But this specific one is something I've never shared with anyone before. This is actually a screenshot from a video I took at the time, and nobody knows that I even did this until today. The video is 20 minutes long, so no, it's not one of those feel sorry for me TikToks, but in this video, I say that I will either look back at this one day and see how far I've come, or whoever found it would understand why I chose to end my life. I still haven't been able to watch this video back yet, but you guys are the first people to even know it exists. But I thought that would give you an idea of where I was at, because that was my final goodbye. So on Christmas Eve, 2021, shortly after making that video, I found myself in an emergency appointment with a psychiatrist at the local hospital. I had been struggling with my mental health and had been medically suspended from work because of it. So suddenly, I literally had no reason to get up anymore. I called the doctor to ask for help, and because it was Christmas, they said they could get me in to see someone in 6 weeks. And I said, don't worry about it, I won't be here in 6 weeks, which resulted in that emergency appointment. Looking back at that time and at that moment, it was absolutely a pivotal point in my life. I still don't know how I found the strength to ask for help. Well, maybe now I do. And what happened from then on was definitely God-led, which I can see so clearly looking back. At the time, it just felt like these little miracles in a really dark time. But as I tell you the story now, you'll see that it was God. So during this psychiatrist appointment, for the first time ever, someone suggested to me that my brain might work differently. I had never, ever considered this before. I just thought I was broken and a terrible person. Hearing that actually there might be an explanation for this suddenly opened up a level of self-compassion I had never been able to access before. That particular diagnosis turned out to be the wrong one, but just that opening up of thinking that my brain might be different was literally life-changing. Eventually, I ended up finding out that I was autistic, and those of you who know me well now will be like, well, duh. But again, that was another pivotal moment of my life. I love talking about neurodiversity, and I'll talk in a bit about how this has shown up in my faith journey, but for now I will simply extend an invitation. I am an open book, and I truly believe education on specific topics like autism benefits everyone, so please do come and chat to me about this anytime. Maybe not today, because as you can imagine, getting wet in my clothes in front of everyone making eye contact with me is an absolute nightmare for my brain today. But one of my aims in life is to actually use this part of my journey to help other people who are going through the same thing. And if you mention anything like autism to Keely, you'll probably be introduced to me anyway. So back to the story. I was now getting some therapy, but I was still suspended from work. Then these random thoughts started to pop into my head about the possibility of fostering a dog. Then those thoughts grew into possibly even adopting one, and I'd never even thought about this before. So clearly, God knew I needed a friend. I started looking around, and somehow, again, one of those things where at the time I couldn't explain why, I stumbled across the page of a rescue 2 hours away from me. And on that very day, they had posted about a dog who had been at the rescue for 4 months and had so far had no interest in her. I can't explain it, but as soon as I saw that first post, I knew she was mine. They posted every day for a week, and each day I fell in love with her a little bit more. Now, if any of you have ever tried to adopt a dog before, you'll know it's not easy. Some of them expect you to have 100 acres, a specific blood type, and never interact with people ever. But as I now know this was a God-led thing, my application to meet her was accepted, in spite of the fact that I literally didn't even have a proper garden. They wanted someone local, I lived 2 hours away. I didn't really tick many of the boxes at all, but God wanted us to be friends, and so it was. And the day I met her, my life changed. All of a sudden, I had a reason to get up in the morning. I was allowed to take her home after a few meetings. That's not me. All of a sudden, I had a reason to get up in the morning. I was allowed to take her home after a few meetings, and the day before I picked her up, I got made redundant. And again, now I can see, thank you God, I was gifted with all the time in the world to settle in my new bestie. And Casey has been by my side ever since. She has had a terrible past and suffered 8 years of abuse and multiple litters before coming to me to retire. Technically, I rescued her, but she absolutely rescued me. Whenever I have visited those dark spaces since, and I still very much do, she is the reason that I never act on those thoughts. She is literally the reason I am still here today. She taught me what unconditional love really is, and I can see that she was absolutely a gift from God. So, having been made redundant, I should be panicking, right? But no, I actually felt this weird sense of calm, which I now recognise as the same peace I feel when I trust God. I knew something amazing was coming, and it was. I landed myself an amazing job, which opened up doors I never even knew existed. It felt so easy, like it was meant to be. Without going into too much detail, through the job and the people I met is actually how I ended up moving to Kent. So God clearly had a plan. The bit that shocked me when I looked back at this story was something I never really picked up on before, but now it makes sense. It felt like such a weird thing at the time, how I came across a London-based sales job when that is not what I was looking for. But my boss told me shortly after joining that over that Christmas when I'd been struggling, she had been praying for someone to come into her life and business and fulfill what I ended up doing. So I was the answer to her prayers, and without even realising it, the world she opened up to me became the answers to mine and brought me to Kent and in turn to Riverside. I had decided I wanted a new life, so I asked myself, do you really want to die? Or if you could wake up tomorrow without your past in a place nobody knew you, would you? And the answer was yes, I would. So I packed up all my belongings and the dog, changed my phone number, changed my email address, deleted my social media and moved over 300 miles away. Yes, it is a little bit dramatic. At the time, I used to say, ask me in a year whether it was brave or stupid. And that was almost 2 years ago, and it was absolutely the best decision. So enter Riverside. Living in Herne Bay, not knowing a single person, working from home, just me and my dog, was lonely. Christmas came round, and it was the first time ever I wasn't able to spend Christmas with my family. My mum became seriously ill. She's fine now. And in all honesty, I had to choose between my family and my dog. My parents live abroad, so going to spend Christmas with them would have meant leaving Casey behind. Spoiler alert, if I ever have to choose between anything, anyone, and the dog will win. You've seen how cute she is now. So I was alone for Christmas and it sucked. But this is where the little voices became louder. I started thinking about going to midnight mass, and I wasn't even a Christian at this point. Then I started getting weird random thoughts about faith. A lot of people I knew had faith, and I was starting to see it everywhere. I'd listen to podcasts of people I admired, and they would attribute their success to God. People I interacted with would talk about praying. People who influenced me spoke about God. I suddenly started seeing it everywhere. My sister had actually gifted me with a Bible on Christmas Eve 2015, and I'd never really done anything with it. It was actually one of my most prized possessions, though, even though I wasn't religious. You can see here the effort she's gone into it. She did all these little cards, said, when you're feeling sad, read this. It was really, really nice. To me, it just felt like a big book of love, which it turns out is actually what it is. But even though I had this Bible, I never felt a pull to faith until this Christmas time, 9 years later. One day I was driving through Chesfield and I thought, what's that building? I'd passed it maybe 3 or 4 times a week and never noticed it. Then I got an inspired feeling that I wanted to ask on Facebook about LGBT-friendly churches. So I did an anonymous post, and funnily enough, the comments were Riverside, Riverside, Riverside. And then I realised it was the building I'd suddenly noticed the other day. At the time, it all felt bizarre, but now it was clearly God. So that was it. I decided to give it a go. So on Sunday, January the 7th, I walked into Riverside. I came in on my own, not knowing anyone or anything, which by itself is bizarre because that's a recipe for disaster for me usually, being autistic. I had no faith. To be honest, I'd never really allowed myself to consider it because I'm gay. Whenever anyone mentioned it before, I had joked that I was going to hell anyway, which is quite sad when I think about it now. I felt like the door to faith was closed to me and that there wasn't even a point me investigating it. Because let's face it, a tattooed lesbian with long blonde extensions, a face full of makeup, and wearing clothes you're more likely to find on your teenage son would probably not be very welcomed in a traditional old-fashioned church. But then I walked into Riverside. I remember thinking on that day, I don't know what that was, but I want more of it. As soon as I walked in, I was welcomed. And I don't know how to say it other than I was genuinely welcomed. I've been doing a lot of research recently into the church and LGBT issues, and I can see that welcomed and truly welcomed are 2 very different things. I have been welcomed into the Riverside family exactly as I am. My autism, my gayness, and my always asking questions. I was very fortunate that Alpha was just about to start as I joined, so I got a crash course with Hayley in Christianity pretty early on. And this is where my questioning comes in. I am the kind of person who asks a lot of questions. My brain really needs to understand things, and to be honest, I don't really have a fear of looking silly asking questions, so I ask them, and I still do. I say things and ask things that most people would probably keep quiet about, but I want to know. And I've actually found that whenever I've done this, someone always comes up to me afterwards and thanks me for being brave enough to ask. I don't think it's brave, I'm just inquisitive. So if you've got questions, ask them, because I can almost guarantee I've asked the worst one. To the point that my questioning in Alpha even stopped me from coming to church, because I had one massive question that kept coming up. And I'm going to be honest, I wasn't even sure if I should say this here today, but I have promised to be me. I have big questions around Jesus and the Bible. I find it easy to accept God, because to me, God is like an energy and we're not supposed to be able to see him. But the physical stuff, I still to this day really struggle with. So I panicked and I skipped a Sunday, and of course, Keely noticed and invited me in for a coffee. And I'm not sure she expected the true level of Kelly honesty, but she's used to it by now. But I blurted out that I believe in God but struggle with the stories of Jesus. We had a long conversation about it, and it turns out that it's no wonder I struggle with that part of it. From my understanding, and sorry, Keely, if I'm paraphrasing totally incorrectly, Simon can fix it afterwards if I am, but Jesus is what most people connect with because of the human element. People find it easier to connect with this in a relationship sense. Well, I was born with a brain that struggles with people and relationships. So actually, it's no wonder I struggle with this. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm a very head-led person. I have to understand everything. And this, my faith, is the first thing in my life where I've allowed myself to be heart-led. I don't understand a lot of it. I'm still pushing through reading the Bible. It's harder than I thought with a literal brain. And I don't agree with everything I've come across so far. But my heart, well, that's loud. That is very loudly telling me that God is real and that I need to be part of this. So I'm putting my questions aside and going with my heart. See, I told you I'd be honest. But again, if someone listening is thinking the same, I hope it helps. In my mind, we don't need to agree on everything. But to me, church is like a type of person, like Keely says, God with skin on. I have never in my entire life met people like I've met at Riverside. True, genuine, kind people. And that, to me, is God. Everything else to me feels irrelevant if I feel the love of God. That totally would be a great place to end, wouldn't it? But I do want to tell you a couple of my weird stories that have come from praying. I've been laughing to myself putting this together because if I was sat listening to these stories a year ago, I would have said, yeah, right. But they did actually happen. So not long after joining Riverside, I thought, let me give this praying thing a go. And Keely always laughs when I say it so blasé, but that's genuinely what I thought. I had no idea how to pray. So my prayers mostly started with, hey God, I've got no idea what I'm doing here. I did end up coming up with a formula for prayers. Yes, I know I'm a geek, but I still use it every day. Every night I pray thanks for things that have gone well today. I ask for guidance or help on whatever I need, and then I pray for someone else. It works for me. So I started praying, and at the beginning it was almost like I was testing it. I started with small things. I really wanted to experience someone praying for me. And I know it's so weird when I think about it. I was literally praying for someone else to do exactly what I was doing at the time. I know it's weird, but don't judge me, okay? I just wanted to experience it. So I prayed for it, and the next thing I knew, Keely was coming over to me in worship space and asking if she could pray for me. I still remember that prayer, actually. Keely was speaking about me dipping my toe into faith, and we joke now that actually I feel like I dipped my toe in and slipped straight in. Then I'm pretty sure Keely removed the stairs so I couldn't get back out. At the time, I was considering leaving my job, and when I joined Riverside, there was a clash. Things seemed to be just not matching up. I was needing to work some Sundays, the camping weekend was my working weekend. It seemed like God was saying I needed to pick a path because I couldn't do both. So again, I gave this praying thing a go. I ended up resigning on the Wednesday, getting offered a new job on the Thursday, and starting the new job on the Friday. It was insane. It felt like I had some kind of magic wand that whatever I prayed for was coming true. But I think you must get some kind of 30-day new Christian trial on this magic wand. And that after that, you've got to put a bit more effort in. They do still come true, but just not as quickly after your 30-day new Christian trial's ended. Since then, this has happened a few times. I ended up in a situation where I had to leave my house very quickly and unexpectedly, and I was terrified that I was about to become homeless. So I started to pray. And again, without going into too much detail, because it's not purely my story to tell, an amazing person from church came through for me. And I now have a beautiful house with a garden that the dog absolutely loves, everything lined up perfectly. My most recent one, I had been wanting to find some work after starting a business. So I prayed about it, then I posted on LinkedIn saying who I was, what I do, and what I was looking for. A week later, after a week of praying, wanting work, I get a random phone call from a stranger. When I came off the phone, my girlfriend said to me, "Did you just get offered a job from a stranger?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I did." I told her that if it was legit, God was definitely involved somewhere, but I just couldn't see it yet. And it turns out the next day I found out that it was someone from my life group that had posted about me on LinkedIn. His friend had seen the post and boom, just like that, I was offered work with no CV, no formal interview, nothing. I knew God was involved. On that note of mentioning a girlfriend, one thing I've noticed now the 30-day new Christian trial is over, sometimes you've got to wait a really long time. For those of you who weren't here last year, one Sunday we were given a bulb to plant and a prayer card to write on it what we would like God to deliver for us. I wrote on my card that I wanted a wife and friends. It was written way better than that, but that's the basic gist. Then I planted the bulb, put it outside, prayed over it, and this is what happened. Yes, it threw itself out of the pot. I shoved it back in and pretended like it hadn't happened, but it was like God had said, no, not yet. So fast forward to the end of last year, I was so busy, I decided to start a business and I had a lot on my plate. And then God finally appears and says, hey, do you know that girlfriend you've been praying for? Do you want her now? I mean, yeah, God, I do, but it's so inconvenient. I've been asking for a year and now you drop her in? But sure, I'll still take it. And I think it says a lot about Riverside that I'm able to bring her with me. I brought her into a church and the welcome she received was amazing. The experience people from the LGBT community get here is truly phenomenal, and I'm really proud to be able to welcome my friends, family, and partner into the church and have them be as accepted as me. Now we come to the final bit, which I'm sure you're glad of, which is truly the most special part of Riverside for me, the community. Now, I am very lucky that, like Hayley, I do have a lovely family, and actually, our relationship as a family has changed so much since I've been coming here. Last Christmas, we even managed to spend 5 whole days together without a single argument for the first time in about 10 years, and it was amazing. I feel closer to my dad than I've been in years, and I love that our family is now closer than ever. And Riverside has become my second family. I don't think I've ever admitted about this prayer, but here we go. I used to sit right in the back corner over there, and I used to sit right behind a friendship group. I would watch them with the kids and the babies and see them laughing together, and it really warmed my heart. So one evening, as part of my prayer formula, the people I chose to pray for was that friendship group. I prayed, saying, I know it's not for me, but I pray that their friendship remains strong, blah, blah, blah. That week, they invited me to join them, and I cried. I don't think I've ever told them that, but there you go. Since I joined this church, the people have been incredible. As I mentioned before, I've been in really dark places, and I do still get those times. A couple of months ago, I went to see a musical, Dear Evan Hansen. For those of you who don't know, it's about a young teen who takes his own life. There's a song in the middle of it called You Will Be Found, and I cried the whole way through. And you know why? Because they sing on repeat, you are not alone, you are not alone, you are not alone. And for the first time ever, I really did feel like I wasn't alone. In this room alone, there are so many people in my phone book who I know I can call on. I speak to some people almost daily, sharing our lives on voice notes. I have friends who will call me out and give me amazing advice. I have friends of all ages, people I never would have connected with before. I'm part of a life group. I go to the gym and on walks and to musicals with church friends. And the best thing is the kind of people they are. Because they are Christians, they are kind, genuine people. I was driving on a Saturday night a few weeks ago and it was all pounding club music and I couldn't think of anything worse than going on a night out. And do you know where I was going? I was on my way to a board games night with church friends and that made me so happy. This has been the biggest part of the journey for me, learning to open up my heart. I have kept myself isolated for such a long time. It felt alien for me to feel and accept love. But one of the first people I met at Riverside gave me the wise advice that if I keep the walls up so I don't get hurt, I'm actually not able to let the love in either. So I have been bringing down my walls, starting with the safety of the Riverside community. I'm still working on being totally secure in the knowledge that God loves me unconditionally, as that's such an alien concept, but I do feel his love. And he is showing me, through the people of this church, how to start accepting love. So if you're feeling the same, this is the best place to try it. One person, one brick, one kind interaction at a time. I'm so incredibly grateful for everything Riverside has brought into my life. It truly has changed my life. From this moment on, I vow to be committed to the journey, to be the person God wants me to be, to sparkle, as one of my life group friends would say. I want to sparkle with the love of God and the love of Riverside. Thank you all so much for listening.
Okay. Hayley, upon your confession of faith, we now baptize you in the name of God the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That was James saying, I so want to be baptized. Come on, come on. Kelly, upon your confession of faith, we now baptize you in the name of God the Father, Jesus the Son, and the Holy Spirit.